good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back to the ROS Media channel. Bit of an impromptu one today. Ian and I decided we were going to do another live at the end of the week today on Friday. What we're going to talk about today, I think, is really going to be interesting to all of our members, but also potentially business owners, new people coming in as well. We're going to be talking about banking. Before I get into that, we are currently live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live on X. Let me just make sure that we are live on Instagram and on our Telegram channel. So we'll just get that into place. Excellent. Right, we are now live on Instagram. Let's just get all of our Telegram followers following as well. And as soon as that goes live, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into what we're going to be talking about today. There we go. Looks like we are now live on Telegram as well. There we go. So, what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about this particular subject. You may have heard us mention TREAS 310. This is the fund flow from the IRS to the private treasury. This is the final piece of the puzzle in the signature credit tax redirection. If you are completely new to this and you have no clue what we're talking about, then let me first of all introduce myself. My name is Andy. I'm in charge of the ROS Media platform here. I'm with my good friend Ian Clifford. Ian is the founder and the president here at the Republic of Old Souls, and also responsible for all of our protocols, primarily the Monopoly Game Changer protocol. If you've been watching any of our content, you will know what that is. If you haven't been watching any of our content, but you just feel that something's a little bit off, something's not quite right in the world that you live in. Maybe you feel like you're struggling. Maybe you feel like you're on this hamster wheel, constantly trying to get ahead, but you seem to be taking 3 steps forward, 5 steps back. Whatever that feeling is, we know why it is, and we're gonna highlight that every weekend. We have flagship webinars on a Saturday where we talk about the system that we live in, what it appears to be versus the reality of what it actually is. So if you want to join us at the weekend, you're more than welcome to. 10 a.m. UK time every Saturday morning, we do a flagship webinar, and Ian will be uncovering and opening the curtain on a lot of these issues that people are facing, but more importantly, how to deal with that, how to play the game at a pro level rather than feel like you're struggling and constantly in debt. But today, what we're going to discuss is we're going to be talking about this TREAS 310 fund flow. The banking side of things is a complex part of this puzzle. It's the end game, it's the end piece of what everybody that's a member here is looking forward to, which is the recoupment of that tax redirection. But you will know as well as I do, if you've ever tried to open a bank account, whether it be a bank account for a trust or a bank account for a business, even just a domestic bank account, and maybe try and move money, withdraw money. It doesn't have to be a large amount of money. Sometimes it can be just be a modest amount. You already know, though, that traditional retail banking can be an absolute nightmare, particularly if you have got a business and you are moving large sums of money. Endless paperwork, evasive questions, possible sudden account or fund freezes. It feels like the banks treats your hard-earned capital as if it belongs to them and not you. But what if you could bypass that retail banking bottleneck entirely? What if you could establish an institutional grade banking network that gives you absolute separation, private debit card liquidity, and the ability to clear high volume disbursements automatically without the bank constantly breathing down your neck? If that's something that's of interest to you, either personally or from a business perspective, then today we're going to do a deep dive into a completely different framework. This is called a fiduciary master and sub-account framework. We're going to reveal how a very unique banking architecture that Ian has put together, that's powered by Wyoming trust law and virtual account ledgering, allows you to actually take control of your own private treasury and never have to suffer those bottlenecks ever again. So Ian, really excited to dig into this one with the audience, and I'm sure they are too. Maybe starting at the top here, the foundation of this actual setup. Most business owners and people are taught, just to open up a standard LLC. If it's a trust, it will just be a basic trust. Yes, it may keep all of their assets in one basket, but they're exposed, aren't they? You utilize a very specific chassis here, a Wyoming Series LLC under Wyoming statute. For a layperson, how does this structure allow this sort of single master hub to establish an infinite number of internal sub-accounts underneath that? And why is this liability firewall between them so critical for people to protect their assets?
Well, normally in banking, the bank wants all the due diligence on the account holder. That's the grant. In our structure, that's the grantor of the international foreign grantor trust. That's the birth certificate construct. They want due diligence. They want to know, who is the account holder, what's their credit score, where does their funds come from, what are they going to do with their funds, and all of these questions which you typically get if you open a bank account. And many people are unbanked because the banks simply close their account for a whole range of different reasons. It's become quite a problem, and that problem is going to get worse with the linking the social score to your bank account, or the bank account for the birth certificate construct. So if you're stepping outside the rails, the constrained rails of the control system, probably the first thing that's going to suffer is your banking. And if they turn your banking off, what do you do then? If you look at in the COVID period, when the Canadian truckers were protesting all over Canada and driving their truck convoys around, ending up in Vancouver, blocking up the streets because they were being affected badly by the COVID restrictions, etc. So how did they disperse the truckers? Well, they didn't send the army in, or send drones in, or send the police in. No, they just turned all the bank accounts off.
Yeah.
And within a day or two, the truckers had no way of surviving because they had no cash. They couldn't draw cash out of an ATM. They couldn't go in anywhere and purchase anything. They had no fuel for their trucks. They had no food, nothing to drink. So if you turn the money off, then that's debilitating. I mean, what else can you do unless you've got a reserve of cash somewhere that you can draw down on? You're instantly out of the game. You're out of a digital money of account game. So that's a really extreme example. But look what they've done to me. I mean, I'm in 2023. I'm arrested, and on that day, all of my bank accounts are frozen.
Yeah.
On speculation that I may have needed a license to conduct financial services, which I don't do, and they know I don't do it. And all my banking is frozen on that day. Everything, business accounts, personal accounts, the whole lot, and still remains frozen today, over 3 years later. So these are things that are going on. And you just imagine how would you run your family if all your banking is turned off? It's very difficult, yeah. And even if you try and open another bank account with another provider, you may find it's difficult, because once you get your accounts closed in one bank, then it's like you that's going to be on the record. So it becomes more and more difficult. Then you've got the other problem is, unless you're running a corporate enterprise that's usually turning over very large amounts, if you're running a regular retail bank account and you've got average cash flows going through it, and the banks they know what you're doing, they know what cash flows they're expecting to see in and out of the account, Suddenly you start crediting the account with, $1 million or $2 million. That's going to flag straight up. They're going to be all over it. They'll freeze the account. They'll want to know what it's all about. Where did it come from? They're not going to understand its tax redirection. They're not going to get that at all. You're going to have potentially a problem with receipt of funds of that magnitude.
Yeah.
Even if they receive them in, then you've got a problem in spending them. Suddenly your account's flagged because its activity is outside the normal range. And they've got all manner of filters in their, they run these databases. They know, they know what behavior patterns they're used to seeing in each account. And suddenly you step outside the behavior pattern and the account gets flagged. So you could have a problem there, even if you're not doing anything that's outside of the control rails and the control agenda. You could have a problem just because of the change in the nature of the cash flow coming in and going out. So it never used to be like this. Banking, they didn't used to ask you a load of questions. You try go to the bank, physically go in the bank if you've still got a branch and say, hey, I want to draw out, $10,000, pounds, euros, whatever your currency, because I want to buy some antiques or I want to buy something in a shop. And they'll want to know all about it and what is it and can we see it and where's the invoice and where's the detail about what it is. And by the way, your account is constrained to 1,000 or 2,000 a day, and we can't give you 10,000. And I've had this happen to me. I've had some friends of mine who wanted to buy an antique clock a couple of years ago, a grandfather clock. It was about £15,000. It was,
Wow.
It's a proper antique, and they wanted to draw plenty of funds in their account. They want to draw some funds out to buy this antique clock in a antique shop that wants cash, and the bank wouldn't let them draw the funds out. So there's lots of examples. There's lots of people who are running a business. Suddenly their account gets frozen. If they're running different ways of collecting fees from their clients, their customers, you can have all manner of problems with just the ability to collect fees from your customers these days. So banking is not what it used to be. It's become a bit of a minefield for problems, and you never really know what's going to happen next. And what we're doing, of course, is out of the ordinary. So you try and run multiple millions through your existing bank accounts, almost certainly you're going to have problems. So the framework of what I've built is to lawfully avoid that and operate all of the banking from the funds that originate from the tax redirection in a completely different way to the way that our members are running their current banking. And for our business owner members, then there's an opportunity to run corporate banking in a completely new way, in a private way, which there's no reporting, no taxes. So not only for the private treasury, that's the management of the tax redirection funds, but even for members who are operating on a business level and want to operate privately without government overreach, without tax, just in a private way, and then redirect taxes through their business expenditure as well. So there's multiple aspects of the banking platform that I've designed to achieve these objectives. So we've kind of got three objectives. You've got the receipt of the signature credit tax from the IRS.
Yeah.
You've got the protection of the cash within the private treasury and the ability to use that as your banking conduit for spending and receiving back signature credit tax redirection. That's the private treasury. And then you've got an objective for business owners who want to go private with their business income. They don't want to report it. They don't want to pay tax on it. Basically, they just want to go private and keep their business revenue outside of the normal reporting mechanism, which sounds very difficult to do, but it's actually a lot easier than people have realised. I've talked about that, and I'm going to be talking quite a bit more about this, what I call the commerce protocol, how to turn commerce to cause and go from public to private, and therefore lawfully not have to disclose what you're doing with your business revenue, which would be massive tax savings, and basically turbocharge prosperity through signatory credit tax redirection on business revenue, which comes as a package. So what I've put together is to achieve all those three objectives and doing it in such a way where it's completely lawful, using the rules of the monopoly board system to find a solution. So we're not hiding things away, or trying to do something which could be shut down, or some loophole that might be closed down. No, I'm just, the whole of the Clifford Protocol from A through Z is just looking at how the system works, finding lawful ways to make it work for our objectives, and then deploying it so that you can't be shut down because you're not doing anything other than following the rules of the game on the monopoly board system. And that's what the banking infrastructure is also doing, in addition to the redirection of taxes, the tracking of securities, the holder in due course, the foreign grantor trust, 1099 OID, 1041, Form 56, the redirection of taxes from the 945 tax module onto the 945 tax module from the 1120. Then you've got the next bit, which is how do you actually get the IRS to send the tax redirection? That's TREAS 310, as you mentioned earlier. Okay, fine, so you can do that. And then how do you get it into the hands of the members for them to better use it within the monopoly board system, whilst avoiding banking pitfalls and being private in the bargain? And that's what the banking platform that I've developed aims to do.
Okay, well, let's dig into that a little bit more, because you talk about the initial entity. When it comes to state regulation, instead of opening up, let's say, or acting as a traditional public trustee, we've got MLITR Research LLC, but that operates strictly as an administrative agent under this Wyoming Uniform Power of Attorney Act. So why is that private agency distinction so important? How does it keep the state and the public trust system completely out of private business affairs?
Well, it's massively pivotal. It's a bit like my eureka moment when I researched and discovered that the Foreign Grantors Trust is the only entity that you could use for creditor to act as a creditor entity and holder in due course. The Wyoming attorney in fact model is another game-changing part of the jigsaw, because ordinarily, if you set up a Foreign Grantors Trust and appoint a trustee, that trustee would ordinarily, if it's going to be a trustee for many foreign grantor trusts, it would ordinarily need a trustee license.
Yeah.
And a trustee license to manage what could be tens of thousands of foreign grantor trusts, maybe hundreds of thousands. That's a serious license that you need. And that will go through a lot of scrutiny. There's a lot of due diligence, a lot of setup. You're going to need a whole infrastructure, a trustee infrastructure. You're going to have a board of directors. You're going to have risk managers, compliance officers. You're going to have corporate insurances, licenses, all manner of stuff, which I've done all these things before in my career. And they take a year, or a minimum of a year, to set all that up. And You've got to recruit all the people. You've got to have big CVs. You know, it's something I've done before when I've set up public investment companies, and it's a big job. And that's ordinarily what you'd expect to see if you were operating as a corporate trustee for thousands of foreign grantor trusts. What I did was to look and see, again, it comes back to agency, you see. So agency, although, you know, we talked a lot about it yesterday in terms of the birth certificate contract, well, a power of attorney is an agency.
Right. Yeah.
You can appoint someone as your attorney. You're basically appointing them as your agent.
Yeah.
Law of agency, right? And an agency is like a trustee. It's like a trustee. It's very, very similar in the law. But if you are an agent, you don't need to be licensed.
Okay. Okay. I see where you're going with this.
So rather than go down the licensing route, you know, let's get a trustee company, let's get a license, let's get a load of infrastructure and go down that pathway. I looked at it, well, why can't we use agency? Why can't we why can't we appoint a corporate entity as an agent for each of the foreign grantor trusts? And therefore the entity that's appointed can be appointed without having to be a licensed trust company. It can be an unlicensed attorney company.
Okay.
And that's what I wanted to achieve. And I then looked around to see where you could do that. And I came across Wyoming, that's got a perfect structure for an LLC, a limited liability corporation, that can operate as under an attorney in fact model, under an agency model, individual agencies with an unlimited number of foreign grantor trusts. So it can operate as a trustee. So when we get the foreign grantor's trust and set it up for tax redirection, it can go down as the trustee, individually, as an attorney in fact. And there's two things that I had to overcome here. One was you can't have the foreign grantor's trust can't be controlled within the US.
No, otherwise it wouldn't be foreign, would it?
That takes it out. It puts it back into the bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So if you were to appoint a professional licensed trustee company, that would mean that the foreign grantor's trust is being controlled by a US entity.
Okay.
And that would take away its ability to operate as a creditor, and it wouldn't be able to pass the control test.
No.
So a Wyoming limited liability corporation where the grantor is appointing the company under an attorney in fact model doesn't create the US control problem. It avoids the US control problem. Because I could appoint you as my attorney in fact to manage my foreign grantor's trust, and the control would be outside of the United States. Because ultimately I've appointed you, so the control stays with me, the grantor, but not me, the birth certificate contract.
Gotcha.
So the ultimate control of the foreign grantor's trust is the grantor, not the trustee. But if you appoint a professional trustee company, they will need to have ultimate control because they have to have ultimate control because of their license.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have ultimate control and the grantors can go off and do anything they want, then the trust company's liable.
Yeah.
So the trust company isn't going to permit that. They're going to want control. Well, that brings you back into making the foreign grantor's trust a domestic trust.
Mm-hmm.
And that would blow up the whole, creditor,
like
holder in due course objective would be blown up.
Back into the bankruptcy, back in as a debtor entity again, so that the recoupment couldn't happen.
which of course is why trust companies are licensed, because anything that's licensed is like registered. So if you're running a licensed organization, you're basically under the control of the state, which is part of the bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So the attorney-in-fact model, agency again, is not a curse; it's a blessing, right?
It's a friend again, once more. Okay.
So the grantor is appointing MLITR Research as its attorney-in-fact under agency, and then so that achieves it avoids the problem of control inside the US. And then when you come to the banking, the Wyoming legislation enables an LLC that has been created and has got an individual basically mandate from its grantor trust to operate under the attorney-in-fact model. It can operate with an unlimited number of attorney-in-fact individual appointments, whilst it can open a bank account at the corporate level for MLITR Research, where the bank only wants to look at MLITR Research as an LLC. They don't need to look at all the individual grantor trusts.
Okay.
With modern banking infrastructure, there's something called IBANs. Well, IBANs are just like reference numbers. Remember, this is a money of account system, so it's all accounting ledgers, right?
Yeah.
So if you set up a virtual, it's called a virtual IBAN system, where you have one master account, MLITR Research, an unlimited number of sub-accounts with the VIBAN or virtual IBAN infrastructure. The bank sees the incoming TREAS 310 receipt from the IRS, that's the tax redirection. They see all that coming to MLITR Research. But the individual reference numbers for each individual TREAS 310 are aligned to the individual grantor trust. So there's a unique reference that credits the sub-account, which is just a ledger, just ledgering, it's just accounting and ledgering. The actual funds that the IRS is sending, they're actually sending to MLITR Research. But you can segregate and you can allocate, because there's a unique reference number which the receiving account can identify and then allocate the funds in an accounting ledger way to a sub-account. But the bank doesn't need to know who the grantor trust is, the grantor, beneficiaries, anything other than the top of the system, which is MLITR Research.
Okay.
So that means that all of the inflows coming in under TREAS 310 are not individually tracked and traced to the foreign grantor's trust. They are all coming into MLITR Research at a corporate level.
Gotcha. So there's that shield there as well for the beneficiary too. Let's talk a little bit about because also there's a mapping here of the federal employer identification numbers, isn't there? And that directly maps into these VIBAN endpoints as well, so that you can kind of bypass these traditional retail bottlenecks and run this multiple segregated domains under the one centralized gateway. So I'm hoping that you guys that are watching this, I'm hoping you're kind of forming this picture in your head. Think of it like if you could map this out, you've got the main account at the top, you've got all of these sub-accounts underneath, all with their own individual virtual IBAN numbers. TREAS 310 comes into the top, but the VIBAN number is the endpoint. So that is the number that we would be putting on your 1041 tax return to the IRS. And that is the account that will flow through the main account, and then it will link to that VIBAN number and drop into that segregated account, which is linked to your trust. That's linked to your 98 series grantor trust for tax redirection. And then underneath of that, you would also then have your private treasury 98 grantor trust as well. So you've got two trusts, we've got the one main at the top, but it all flows through that. One of the things I wanted to talk about here, Ian, which again is just another byproduct of this architecture that you've put together, is the horrific KYC bottleneck that people face. You know, this compliance that people have to go through. Know your customer. If you've got multiple segregated accounts, the compliance overhead for doing that could be staggering. You know, because you then have to do KYC on every single account, every single person. Can you explain how you've got this closed class KYC sort of aggregation model that solves all of this? How does, you know, doing just the primary onboarding of that master account, that main hub, and we obviously have a signatory for that, who is our ERO. How does that insulate things and free the individual sub accounts from all of this typical retail tier vetting and KYC restriction?
Well, the banking rail, the provider of the bank, the VI ban account, they only look at the MLITR research and due diligence on MLITR research, who runs it, have they got a clean license, the fact that our ERO has got an IRS license, it's got a CAF, it's got a very clean license, a very clean record, a very high banking credit score. It's all good news. You know, the bank's only looking at MLITR research, and can it operate within the legislation that enables it to run an attorney in fact model, and that you tick all the boxes with the Wyoming structure. Wyoming is a very interesting place, actually. It's a very innovative state that enables things like this to happen lawfully, which is why, you know, they try and drive a lot of business into Wyoming, because they want prosperity for Wyoming. And I don't think a lot of people realize how many opportunities there are with structuring things in Wyoming. It's a perfect fit for what we're doing. Not only for the TREAS 310, but also for, you know, you mentioned the private treasury. So that is, you've got a grantor, that's our member is a grantor. The grantor is also the trustee of the private treasury. But the account can be opened up in MLITR research, a second master and sub account. And all of the due diligence, again, can be done at the top on MLITR research. And that means that the members can run a private treasury with a bank card in the name of their asset fortress protocol, their private treasury. And we can administer all of that, or say we, MLITR research, can administer it all under an attorney in fact model again. So the asset fortress protocol can appoint MLITR research under an attorney in fact model to operate the banking. So that means that we don't have to go out and find individual bank accounts for each asset fortress protocol, which would be possible. It would be very labor intensive, a lot of toing and froing, due diligence, you know, online onboarding meetings, and, you know, all that KYC, and you need your photograph taken, and, you know, all that stuff that you do if you've opened a bank account recently. They want you to come on a meeting, they want to take a picture of you, and all that stuff, which of course is all to do with the digital ID program that's going on.
Nothing private about that.
No, but in this system, you don't do that, because the bank's only interested in MLITR research. So the grantor and the trustee of the asset fortress protocol is not turning up on any due diligence meeting, not having their face scanned, or they have to submit their passport, or all of these, you know, due diligence type evidence. You don't need to do that.
Okay. So I'm assuming that when these large deposits and disbursements are sent to these accounts, you know, people's current mindset, like we said at the very beginning, you know, often people are terrified about banking compliance and that's going to flag that transaction because of the size of it and because of maybe a name matching issue. But so how does this structure? Because one of the federal regulations that you talk about is this CFR Part 210, and that protects these transactions. So how does that work? Because if you got the bank is legally allowed to clear our main account, if that's legally allowed to sort of clear these incoming deposits, whoever the sponsor bank is that's linked to this structure, because we've obviously got software that's going to need to be put in place. We spoke about banking as a service as well. How are they allowed to clear these incoming deposits just based strictly on the virtual IBAN number rather than manual name matching of the beneficiary, for example?
Well, because the IRS system, the TREAS 310 is, and most of ours will be FedWire, because there'll be over $1 million. Most of our members are doing more than $1 million per year in tax redirection. So the Federal Reserve System, which is the whole US banking system, is under the Federal Reserve. The FedWire, Federal Reserve Wire system, all it needs is the relevant reference numbers from each sub-account of the MLITR structure, and the IRS can electronically issue the TREAS 310 to one master account, but then it's the sub-ledgering reference. When that is received, it's just software, really. The software identifies it by its reference number, and it's like I think a lot of people are unaware that bank accounts are just digital ledgers. There's no box in the bank where they pull a drawer out and that's your account. There's a whole warehouse full of accounts where you go along and undo a doorway and open it up and that's your account. I think a lot of people are unaware that everything is just digital these days.
Yeah.
It's just a digital account. Banking has been digital for a long time. So VIBAN is just another way of referencing a digital account for accounting purposes, where a computer can allocate digits to each of the VIBAN account references. But ultimately, the bank is opening one account for MLITR research, and then is, when those funds are received, you are, from an accounting point of view, you are just like the bean counters. You're just counting the beans and allocating them to individual reference numbers, so that you can identify which sub account has received funds and how much, and which sub account has released funds and how much.
Okay. I think the big question here that all the members are going to want to know is, once these funds clear successfully and safely into their dedicated VIBAN sort of sub-ledger account, how does the actual owner, the beneficiary of that trust account, access their money? Because you mentioned about provisions for these accounts with, private, physical, or maybe virtual debit cards. How does that allow them to run their sub account as an active private treasury that clearly would be have high liquidity to it as well?
So remember, there are two structures here. There's one to receive the TREAS 310 from the IRS. That structure, the members don't have access to that structure. No. So they can't dip into that sub account. MLITR Research will send the funds to their Asset Fortress protocol, so that the 100% of the funds is received into the Asset Fortress protocol sub account ledger. Then the donation can be withdrawn from that account, and that means that second account has now got a signature credit tax redirection event for the next year equal to the donation, so that the members never lose. They don't actually, in the long term, lose anything, because everything is recirculated through the next year's tax redirection. So you're not paying a donation and thinking, oh my God, if I pay this donation, for 20 years, there'll have been nothing left, because
we spoke about that with these sort of ever diminishing results, because you're getting 20% taken out every year. But the way you've structured this allows for that 20% donation to be a tax redirection event.
Yeah. So ROS as a nation gets its donation. The member doesn't. Yeah, okay. In the short term, they can't spend that on other things, but they can redirect it next year, so they can spend it next year, and another donation can be made, and the same. So all they're doing is stepping back the donation for 1 year. So if you had $2 million coming in, okay, so you've got 400,000 donation for our nation to finance its infrastructure. Next year, you've got 2 million again to include that 400,000 donation. So you're going to be able to use it in the next year, and it's basically you're never going to be out of pocket by doing it that way. Now, your second foreign grantor trust, which is the Asset Fortress Protocol, you'll have a debit card. So most people will use their debit card or an online banking facility like you have now. If you want to make bank transfers, you can do that. I think a lot of people will probably use the debit card for everyday stuff. The debit card will be in the name of their Asset Fortress Protocol. So they'll be using that debit card. Larger transactions, they'll be using online banking for their VI band sub account within their Asset Fortress Protocol.
So let's talk a little bit about why traditional structures fail, because I think this is important, particularly for people who maybe are thinking about asset protection, thinking about this from a business perspective. The traditional approach almost always hits or runs into some kind of brick wall when it comes to scale, when it comes to what's called kinship limits as well. So how does the MLITR fiduciary hub sidestep those kind of regulatory landmines entirely?
Well, it's predominantly because the origin of the funds is the United States Treasury.
Yeah.
So you don't get cleaner funds than the United States Treasury. And MLITR research and the Wyoming legislation. Put those two together and you've solved the problem. You couldn't do it. I mean, you could open up individual accounts for each foreign grantors trust with some sort of offshore private bank, and that's also an option. But the amount of work that you'd need to, you've got to get your individual, every individual account set up as an individual account opening event, and you've got to go through the normal account opening process for not only the foreign grantor trust that's receiving the TREAS 310, but then the Asset Fortress as well. So you've got to do it twice.
Yeah,
it's a lot of administration, and on the Asset Fortress, they're going to want every single member, the grantors, to turn up on an online meeting, fill in forms, send due diligence, answer questions on questionnaires, blah blah blah, and that's mandatory now. You can't open a bank account, individual bank account, without that going on. It's just all around the world now.
Yeah. So this completely bypasses all of that. Imagine, when people start to see how this works, and when tax redirection starts coming in this year for our members, because we're so close now in terms of expectations for transcripts coming through, very similar to where we were last year. And then the banking side of things, is all going in the right direction as well. So to think about the membership growing and to think about the Freedom Plan growing, but having to do it manually like that, potentially 50, 100,000 members where you've got to do it twice, that's 200,000 times. It's just, I can't even fathom operationally how we would even begin to administer that for the members. So this clearly is the way to go. It really is an incredibly elegant solution, Ian, but still very an intricate one as well. So, this master sub-account architecture, setting up the Wyoming Series LLC, private treasury card requirements, all of this requires a lot of expert precision as well. So for people watching this, I mean, what would you say to anyone who's listening to this, feeling that this is a great fit, maybe for their business from a commercial perspective, or even just members thinking about moving forwards that have been with us for a while but haven't executed on the Monopoly Game Changer? Maybe they're feeling a bit overwhelmed about the thought of setting this all up. What would you say to them, knowing what their next step should be?
Well, if they're not involved in the Monopoly Game Changer yet, then I seriously think they should get involved in it and get it set up, because there will come a time when we'll have a long waiting list, and there'll come a time when we won't be able to accept any new members in. So my view is to get in now whilst we're in the early phase. Then, if you're running a business, and we're going to be doing interviews and I'll be doing webinars on the commerce protocol, because it's such a massive opportunity.
Yeah.
There's no business out there that I know of that couldn't use a private ministry and receive donations which are private donations, therefore no taxes, no reporting required. There isn't a business out there that I know of, maybe somebody's going to tell me there is one, that couldn't use a ministry, even if they kept their existing business infrastructure. So if they've already got an LLC, some sort of corporation, whatever it might be, they can still keep that.
Yeah.
But they could set up a ministry, and their corporate structure could make donations to their ministry. And those donations are 100% able to be set off against taxable income.
Right.
Or what the tax authorities call income. We've had that discussion about whether there actually is an income, but let's imagine that there is, right? So if you received $100,000 into your corporation, and then you paid it out as a donation to your ministry, your LLC is made zero.
Yeah.
So you could have 100,000 or 1 million or 10 million or 1 billion coming in, and you could pay all your expenses out, and anything that's left over, you could donate that to your ministry.
Yeah.
And now you've got no tax to pay.
No.
Or you could just open up a ministry and ask your customers to pay, to convert their payment to a donation. And then you don't even have to disclose it. So there's two ways to do this. And
I like it personally. I think the donation straight to the ministry, I see more benefits doing that than just keeping the corporate structure as is. Because if you're over here, for example, in the UK, you've got VAT to think about. Imagine if you opened up a ministry structure that Ian's talking about, and you could immediately offer your customer base, or certainly new customers, for example, 20% reduction in your service fees, because you don't have to think about VAT, but that puts you still highly competitive in the marketplace, 20% less than any of your competitors, but no reduction in profit margins for you by doing a donation structure that way.
There's so many advantages that way, but some people have got a licensed business. They have to have, they do import export. They might have some need for an LLC, so they can still do that.
Yeah.
But instead of paying taxes, they can either redirect all of their revenue as donations and therefore not have to report it, or they can receive it in their LLC that needs a license, has an import export, and just basically any surpluses make a donation. It completely wipes out their taxable, what the tax office would call income. Yeah, there is no income.
Yeah.
It's zero. So unless you need your company to show massive profits every year, you just basically don't have a profit. You either have no income at all because it's not an income. Donations are not income.
No.
They're donations, which is why there would be no VAT on them as well. Or you redirect, you just transfer your surpluses from your corporate structure into your ministry. But then, just to think of this, so let's say you took in $1 million into your ministry and spent 800,000 on your overhead costs, you can now redirect 800,000 as part of your tax redirection. So maybe personally you don't get to that 2 million figure, but if you add your business in, you do. Maybe you've got 3 or 4 people in your business. Maybe you could redirect, 2 million each.
Yeah.
Is your business revenue. So not only now are you not paying taxes on the way in, because you've converted your income into donations, or you've eliminated any taxable profit because you've made donation to your ministry. If you're going to have an LLC and a ministry, if you just have a ministry, now you don't have to report anything, and you can recoup the net cash flow as tax redirection by having a private treasury and doing the Clifford Protocol, doing the monopoly game changer.
Yeah.
So now your business has been completely transformed. Now you could then therefore give your customers a lower cost.
Yeah.
You could become the lowest cost option in the market without suffering any reduction in your ability to finance your operation and make a profit.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's transformation, isn't it? We've opened up a bit of a can of worms with this one, Ian. We've got some questions coming in the chat, so maybe we can cover those for our live audience. We've got one of our members here has said, how would that work for an architecture business in London, a limited company?
Well, there's 2 options. An architect's business obviously has paying clients that are paying fees for architectural services. Presumably designs, drawings, whatever the fee schedules are. Well, instead of the direct ministry option is very simple. If your customers believe in your architectural skill set as an organization, your ministry's belief is in architecture. That's what your ministry believes in. So when people make a donation for their drawing, they are donating for you to be able to advance your ministry, which believes in architecture.
Yep. Your
ministry's mission is to advance and enhance architectural design. So you're no longer charging a fee to, for your customer to pay you for a drawing. You're saying, look, that drawing, in order for us to produce that, if it is a drawing or some design, it's £10,000, dollars, euros, whatever it is, donation to our ministry. And our ministry believes in the advancement of architecture. Now, the thing about religious belief is that nobody can say that you can't have a belief in something.
No.
So what you've actually done is you've turned commerce into cause. Your cause is architecture. And it's non-profit, because as a ministry, and with the 508c1a structure, which by the way can operate anywhere in the world, even though it's a US EIN number that's issued, which you need for banking purposes, but there's no reporting because it's a non-profit ministry.
Yeah.
And all you've done is you've just said to your customer or client, it doesn't make any difference to them whether they pay 10,000 fee or 10,000 donation. They can put it in their books and records as a donation, and they still get full tax relief for that.
Yeah.
Because it's a donation to a ministry, which is 100% relievable for tax. So it doesn't make any difference to the customer, but for you, now you don't have to report it.
No.
You don't have to charge VAT, you don't have to report it. You can now take your overhead costs out of your ministry, fund all your overheads, and then the surplus can go into your private treasury. I don't know how big this architectural firm is, but maybe there's a few partners. They've all got a private treasury, which is the foreign grant or trust. And then they can all do tax redirection to include the business expenditure, which they could move into their private treasury, spend out of there, and then every year redirect that up to the 2 million limit. So if there's like 5 partners in a architectural firm, that's 10 million a year that you could redirect.
Yeah.
And not have to disclose anything on the way in.
No.
And not doing it because it's tax evasion or anything like that. No, it's completely lawful.
Yeah.
It's not even tax avoidance because there is no tax on donations.
Yeah. There is
You're not
no
avoiding it. You're just reframing what it is. And nobody can say, hey, you can't believe in architecture in this example.
Mm.
It's like saying you couldn't believe in the Catholic way of religion, or you can't believe in Muslim, or you can't believe in Hinduism. Well, nobody can say you can't have a religious belief. I use the example of an umbrella factory.
Yeah.
So you've got an umbrella factory, and all they make is umbrellas, and they sell umbrellas all over the world. So okay, fine. So what do the customers that are buying these umbrellas, what do they want? Well, they want to keep dry. So the umbrella factory's ministry is about how to help people to keep dry.
Yeah, that's their cause.
That's what you believe in. That's your religion.
Yeah.
What do you do? Well, we keep people dry. That's what we do in our ministry.
Yeah.
Who can say you can't believe in that?
No.
No one.
Perfect. Right, a couple of other questions here that we've got. In terms of the private accounts, and I think there's maybe some, and I've had this question before, maybe a bit of misunderstanding in terms of who's actually opening the private account. So as far as having the tax redirection in place, the asset fortress in place, when can we open a private account?
Well, the asset fortress is the private account. It's the private treasury for the asset fortress foreign grant or trust. So it's a sub account of a master account. It won't make any difference to you. You get to use it as if it were an account. But instead of having to turn up on a due diligence meeting and provide all your customer information and do a facial scan and all that stuff, you won't need to do that.
No. So we open those accounts, not you guys, just to be clear on that. Okay. Question from Marcus. What if one of my clients is HMP?
Is it what, sorry?
What if one of my clients is HMP? Question mark. And that's in capitals, HMP. Not quite sure.
Majesty's Prison. Is that Her Majesty's Prison?
Could possibly be.
HMP, yeah.
Hmm. Maybe you could clarify that for us, Marcus, before we end. Okay, one other question we've got here, which is from Sharon, is could you look at doing an interview going through the different stages of applying for funds as listed on your platform, which covers what each stage involves and approximately how long it takes, at what point we would need to open the trust, a new US bank account to put the recovered funds in. I'm currently 3 months into claiming my first infinite money, and I have a lot of interest and questions from family, friends, and work colleagues. Thanks. Well, Sharon, we've done multiple interviews on this, Ian and I. So what I would recommend is that you go here. If you go to our main ROS Media Platform website, which is this one, rosmediaplatform.is, you'll see in there interviews that Ian and I have done on the tax redirection. We've done a very in-depth interview on the Clifford protocol from front to back, which covers every single aspect of tax redirection, including the banking infrastructure at the back. So if you've got family, friends, people who are really interested in this and they've got questions, then I would say direct your family members to the ROS Media platform as well, so that they can get themselves educated on how this works. But more importantly than that, the best possible way for anybody to understand how this works is to come to our webinars on a Saturday. So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed as to how do I explain this, because I don't fully understand it myself, that's totally normal. Most people that are coming into this new are in that situation. What I would highly recommend is just to say to your friends and your family, look, I'm going through this process. I could try and explain it to you, but I don't want to butcher that. I don't really understand how it works properly. The best thing you can do is come to one of Ian's webinars like I did. They're free, no strings attached. Come and join us on a Saturday morning, 10 a.m. UK time. Listen to Ian, who is the architect behind all of this, explain it to you. And hopefully that'll answer your friends and family's questions. So I hope that helps in terms of what to do next.
Yeah, we've also got the avatar, which will be available soon. You could ask that any question you want. Which we've relaunched it because it was basically censored by the original platform. So that tells you all you need to know. That when things get censored, it must be because we're over the target.
Yeah, for sure. One final question, Ian, before we let our good friends go here. And this is from Kevin. Ian has built a genius level framework. Has the banking for the private treasury to receive the funds from the IRS tax redirection now been confirmed?
Yeah, we've got 3 platforms that we're actually setting up now. We started with a whole list of options, and we've been working on this round the clock to get it off the ground. And we've got 3 that we can choose from. And we're going to be setting up MLITR Research as a banking as a service platform for not just what we've talked about today, but other things as well. And when we launch our gold-backed currency, we're going to probably channel it through the platform. So Ecclesia Financial, it becomes very, very pivotal to what we're doing for the members going forward. And yeah, lots to come on this. But I want to talk quite a bit more about the commerce protocol, because I see that worldwide as a massive opportunity for people who, let's face it, business is difficult. I've been running business for 42 years. It's difficult. There's hardly ever a period where you haven't got some kind of challenge to overcome. I don't ever remember more than a few years in any one stretch where it was all plain sailing, and there was always challenges, and there always probably will be, because we're playing a game of Monopoly which is difficult to play. So if you can reduce your overhead costs by not paying taxes, and then increase your revenues by redirecting the taxes on what you spend, that to me is transformational. And would take a lot of stress out of the running of a business. And it's close to my heart because it's what I've done from the age of 19. So I know what business owners go through because I've been through it all and continue to go through it. So I wish I'd known this years ago. It would have made a big difference. Even my professional practice could have used this, because what I would have done there is I would have kept my limited companies that had licenses to manage money and all that kind of thing. But instead of, declaring a high taxable income, which I did many years in a row, I would have just made donations straight to the ministry and wiped out the taxes that way. And then kept some of my venture public, but the majority of my surplus would have all been private, and that would have been way better than anything else that was available. People were talking about employee benefit trusts. They were talking about setting up pension schemes. They were talking about film partnerships, all kinds of stuff. And many people did those things.
Yeah.
All got a problem. And now they've got a massive problem because they've all been dismantled by the tax authorities.
Yep.
But you can't dismantle religious ministries.
No.
Been around longer than the governments have been around.
It is. It's transformational, and I can't wait to do the interview on that, where we really dig into the commerce protocol together, and I'm sure we'll be doing a webinar on that as well. We got one final question from one of our members here, which is to do with a commercial loan, and they've said, "Dear Ian and Andy, if someone has a large commercial loan stroke mortgage over 1.2 million with a massive monthly payment, can we help him to void it, discharge it? And if yes, how long does it take approximately, please?"
Well, it's a great question, and the answer is absolutely yeah. So what we would do is we'd first of all find, by looking at the bank that allegedly provided the mortgage, where is the security? Where is the mortgage note, the mortgage securitization note? We'll find that. We'll run a forensic report. We'll find out which investment bank is holding it. It'll be somewhere in the New York system, in what's called the indentured trustee. It'll be like Deutsche Bank or Bank of America or Credit Suisse or one of those investment banks. We'll find where it is, and then we'll set up a foreign grantor's trust if you haven't already got one. If you've already got one, because you're already doing the signature credit, then great. If you haven't, we'll set one up. That can take anywhere from a week to a month. And then, because, and we spoke about this yesterday, the mortgage is what's called an inchoate instrument. Inchoate. It's a very unusual word that probably never gets used outside of my interviews. Inchoate, what does it mean? It means incomplete, because it's a ledger. So on one side of the ledger you've got debt, on the other side you've got the credit. Well, the credit doesn't exist because it's been abandoned. So what you're doing is we set up a foreign grantor's trust, identify the security, where is it, who's paying taxes on it, because an investment bank will be paying taxes for the use of it. We file the foreign grantor's trust files 1099 OID, and that fills up the instrument. So if it's 1.2 million, that 1099 OID filing fills it up under the Bills of Exchange Act. That's in one of my research papers on the Ecclesia Law website. You can find it. It fills it up and discharges the debt. So the mortgages can be discharged in possibly a month. Then, in order to get that recognised, is you take the indentured trustee, you issue what's called an adverse claim against the indentured trustee, which basically means that they can no longer claim an interest in that security, mortgage security, because your foreign grantor's trust has discharged it, and it's expecting taxes to be paid to it as the holder in due course, as the creditor, equal to the value of the mortgage, 1.2 million. So not only can you discharge the mortgage, but you can actually get 1.2 million back. Now that has to be put through an adverse claim. It's done in New York, in the New York Southern District of New York. We've got many of our members are already doing this, and it's not a loophole. Nope. And cases are going through because it's perfectly lawful. You discharge, your grantor's trust has discharged the mortgage with a 1099 OID, because the bank that's holding the security never filed the 1099 OID. They're holding it as a nominee for the true creditor. Yep. Well, the foreign grantor's trust turns up as the true creditor, files 1099 OID, IRS publication 1212, discharges the debt in accordance with the Bills of Exchange Act 1882, UCC 3, a load of other UCC codes, and it can't be challenged. No. And the bank that's holding the security, they can't argue that it's not been discharged, because it has, and all the evidence from the IRS proves it. And then they have to tell the local bank, the one that you're paying the mortgage installments to remove the charge from the register, because they no longer have any standing, because the mortgage has been discharged. That's how it works.
So hopefully that answers your question. And guys, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. If you are looking to move forwards, then I would highly recommend that you do so. Come to our webinar on Saturday. We've got another one where we're going to be talking about the Monopoly Game Changer, but we're going to be talking about digital ID. So today we've kind of touched on that, the privacy of what we're doing with the banking structure and how it removes all those bottlenecks, but also removes all of the digital ID and the compliance and everything else that people are struggling with right now. But when it comes to, you know, what we're talking about this Saturday, we're really going to be digging into that digital ID side of things, something that a lot of people are concerned about, not just for themselves, but for their families as well. So that's going to be 10 a.m. Saturday morning. If you want to register for that webinar, you can go here, roswebinars.is. If you're a member here, maybe an advocate here, then you will also have your own referral link that you can pass out to your friends and family. So in answer to our members' question earlier about, you know, how do I get, I'm trying to remember who it was that actually gave us that comment. I think it was Mary. Let me just have a quick look here. No, Sharon. So Sharon, when you were talking about, you know, friends and family and work colleagues showing a lot of interest in this, if you have your own referral link within your members platform, just pass that to them. Let Ian do the explaining on the webinars and let them come to their own conclusions from the information coming directly from Ian. So that is what I would recommend to you guys. Yeah, if you're fresh to this, go to roswebinars.is and get yourself registered. If you're a member, you can help us spread the word. But also remember, we only have 1,000 seats on each of our webinars. Typically, we get more people registered than we have space for. So if you want to attend, it's Friday now. You've got, you know, less than 24 hours to register for tomorrow morning's 10 a.m. webinar. If you're going to pass it out to your friends, you need to do that now as well, because maybe they've got plans at the weekend. So make sure that they get that link so they can register and benefit from the webinar tomorrow. And we will see you guys on our next episode. Have a great day. Bye for now.